your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And then start it, and away we go. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. It is always a pleasure to come your way to have these conversations. Some might say, well, it's not a great conversation because you're going to be talking about some stuff that, it's kind of sad. It's kind of this, that, the other thing. But, as we all get older, it's what we deal with, and it's part of the process. I know that my very special guest, Rosemary Vaswani, who is joining us here on the program, is going to share with us talking about grief and hope and moving forward. And when in a book called When I Press Stop, a memoir of loss. And we thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people, I've got some friends, and of course I myself with my wife, we've had a number of animals, both cats, dogs. Let's see. Let me run down the list. Chickens, blue-tongued skink, tortoise, fish. What else? And the price of admission to all of those coming into our lives is the fact that there's going to come a part, a very small one, but it's very profound, when they leave us, when they pass on. We've actually had to intentionally release our dogs in particular. And they didn't always, we've had only 1 or 2 that have actually passed on their own. And yet the memories abound. I've got, what is it they say, that you are an animal lover if, and one of those ifs is, if you have hundreds of pictures of cats and or dogs.
I'm guilty.
How sort of the pros and the cons of having all of these photographs, these pictures on our phones, on our computers, maybe even on the walls. I mean, is that, I don't want to say is that a good or bad thing, but it's kind of like, what are the pros and the cons of that? Because some people, they will grieve until the day they die over the loss of this animal, this person, that person, and so forth.
Well, I have a dog. This is my first dog, and she is alive, and her name is Georgie. And this is also the family dog. So my husband is the one that passed away 4 years ago, and I know that when Georgie goes, it's going to be. I'm not looking forward to that because she completed our family, and it's just my daughter and I now with Georgie. And So I understand why people. I have a million photos of Georgie. I have videos, and I have a video that I posted the other day of my husband playing with Georgie, and I'm grateful for that. I have that I actually have a recording of that. So it gives me comfort. Um, I I can't speak because, like I said, as far as an animal, I have not. I haven't. I'm not looking forward to it, but I know the day is going to come.
My first wife was totally blind, and in the early days of our relationship, she chose to get a guide dog. And
Mm,
of course, living in Phoenix at the time, she had to go to San Rafael, California, and she was gone for a month, which was hard enough. But as I watched her come down the gangplank of the airplane when she returned, I said, "I'm not getting close to that dog. No way," because I knew that in 10 or 11 or 12 years,
mhm,
well, it turns out that the way they do it, you don't keep the dog until it passes. There comes a point when they retire the dog and it goes back to the
mm,
puppy raisers for their final months or years. So I didn't really experience that. Um, with my present wife, I connected with her and she had four Siberian Huskies. It was a sled dog team.
wow.
And boy, they got the best of me on a number of occasions. But then there came a point when first one, and then another, and then a third.
Mm,
And then we moved to Santa Barbara with the fourth. And we actually believe we gave him an extra year or two of life by moving him out of the heat
mm,
over to Santa Barbara.
mhm,
We actually brought with us three dogs to Santa Barbara. There was, of course, the final Siberian,
mhm,
and then my dog Makushla, who is a beautiful white.
mhm,
We believe it was a shepherd, a husky mix, but it was all white.
mhm.
She had a pink nose. And then there was Connor, who was a shepherd chow mix with that curly tail, you know.
Mhm.
They're all gone.
Oh, I'm
And then we
sorry.
brought into our lives Angus, and it was a year ago, June, that we had
Mhm,
to let him go
mhm.
because, he just had reached the end and he couldn't walk, and it was 100 pounds, and that's not easy to lift,
Wow.
lift up and so forth.
Yeah.
And then we brought with us to Santa Barbara four cats, grew to nine because we started fostering with a
Mhm.
local fostering agency. And they're all gone. But now we live here in Twin Peaks. We have three beautiful sibling black cats.
Oh.
Oh my God. And I tell you, when they start racing around the three-story house, it sounds like cattle. We have wood floors. So it sounds like cattle down in the master bedroom. But that is something that is so vital. I I'm curious as your observation on this. There was a point at which I thought, you know what, I could save myself the grief by just not getting attached to animals or to people, just keeping my
Mm,
distance, putting up the wall.
mhm.
Is that really a solution?
No, because then you're missing out on the love that you would be getting. And I don't know, I feel like this life is about getting as much love as you can. And it's like, so, even one of the things I told my husband when he was dying, he died from this very rare disease called CJD, and it happened within a month, and um, it causes like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's like symptoms, and it's basically a protein in the brain that misfolds. And one of the last conversations I had with him, and when I say conversation, I mean me talking, because at that point he wasn't, but he could hear me. And I did tell him, I said, I want you to know that even if I had known that you were going to die from CJD, I still would have married you. And I can tell you now, 4 years later, I still feel the same way.
Mhm.
Um, it is painful. I don't think that pain ever goes away. You just learn how to manage it. Sometimes it's like in a little compartment by your heart, and you put it away because you have to, not that it's not there, right? I mean,
Right.
it is there, but you have to go. If you have a job, you're raising a child, you have to find a way to keep moving forward. But that person is still there. It's like when you're driving, and I like to use the analogy. It's like you're driving the car and you look in the rear view mirror and you see your person that you lost in the rear view mirror. And that person is always going to be a part of your life, but you have to keep moving forward. You got to function. You got to find a way to, you know.
Yeah. Well, I remember when my father passed away about 3 years ago, and the story that they told me about the process that they went through. And of course, he was at home in my parents' townhouse in Phoenix, and they did what my mother described as singing him into heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And put chairs around his bed. He was pretty much, I think, from what I understand, he was pretty much out of it. But they sat around, they sang the songs we used to sing when we would go on vacation, driving to Flagstaff or wherever it was we were going. Hymns and his favorite songs, maybe by his favorite artists, Marty Robbins and this person, that person, the other. And I thought, oh, I wish I had been there. I wish I could have been there. I would have loved that, But it's I was lucky. My wife and I got to see him or visit with him via video phone the night before he passed. And I'm curious about this in regards to, I know that my mother could say this. I can say this about my father. And I'm wondering if you can actually say this about your husband. It sounds like you can. And that is that when my father passed, we had left nothing unsaid. We were good. Now, the year prior, when my eldest sister, his eldest daughter, passed away, one of the things he said while we were sitting in the dining room was, he says, parents aren't supposed to bury their kids, and it's like, what do you say to that? Nothing. Yeah, I didn't. But I had made a comment at the dining room table that evening following my sister's memorial when my father asked, "Where's your brother?" And I got cute and I tried to tell a joke. Dad, we had to sell him to put gas in the car. Oh, not happy at all. I apologized. I told him where Mike was. And then the evening went on and I'm making up the couch to go to bed because I was staying over there with my brother was there as well at my parents' house. My father comes into the living room and he says, he apologizes for getting so upset earlier. And I turned to him, put down the sheet. I turned to him. I said, Dad, I love you. You will always be my father and we are good. Can you, I would venture you can probably say the same thing about your husband, that there was nothing left unsaid.
No, it's funny when you mentioned the singing because I sang to him. I'm not a singer, but but I had asked the last 3 days. We used to bring him out into the living room and he'd be on the couch. But the last 3 days, he had progressed so much that anything in the living room, like too many people, would upset him. So that last day when he woke up, he looked different to me. He looked like he was already in the other world, like he was getting ready to go. And so at some point I asked the caregiver who was in the room, I said, you can leave. I'm going to talk to him and I just want to have some time. And so he left and I put a chair next to the bed and I started chanting this Indian chant in Sanskrit that he knew as well. And I was doing it quietly and then louder. And And then it just felt very natural. Whatever I was doing just came out naturally. And I talked about our daughter and how I didn't want him to worry, because the first thing that he said when we were at the hospital and they told him that they thought he had CJD was, it wasn't why me or anything like that. It was, I'm worried about my wife and my daughter. So in that moment, I felt the most important thing I can tell him is I just need him to know that we're going to be okay. And I told him, I said, so many people have rallied around us and dropped off meals, and your family is here, our family, and we are not alone. And I just need you to know that we're not going to be alone. I'm going to make sure our daughter goes to college. She's going to be fine. And she's, and then that's when I also told him about our wedding vows. And I actually had said in our wedding vows that if I were to meet this incredible man, but not till the age of 70, I would gladly wait a lifetime. And so that's when I said I would still marry you, even if I knew you were going to die. And, he was a young 56-year-old. And I said all these things, and then I just laid down in the bed next to him and I took a nap. And I want to say maybe like 3 or 4 hours later is when he died. I found out through a medium. I contacted a medium 2 months after he died, because I've lost a lot of people in my life, but this was the first time where I felt I need to know how he's doing, what's happening, is he around us? And the medium actually talked about his last few moments, and she said there were a lot of people coming and going out of the room, and I agreed. But she said at one point there was somebody that was singing to him, and she said it's like a whisper, and then it's louder. And when she said that, I was crying, because I realized, oh my God, he heard it. And in a way, I felt, okay, hearing is the last thing that goes, so he must have heard it. But her validating it, and then she said he heard every word you said. So I felt a sense of completion, knowing he heard everything. And I've also have had experience where I know that he's around us, like he's moving photos around or turning lights off or flickering lights, all of that stuff. And for me, I find it comforting. I love that. And he was such a family man. He loved us so much that it's his way of showing, I got you guys. I'm still, I'm watching over you. So I feel like that's beautiful.
Mm. At the end of these programs, and I've been doing this for September will be, gosh, I can't believe 19 years.
Wow.
And for the majority of that time, probably 17 or 18 of those 19 years, at the end of every program, I started out by just saying love to love, which is Sanskrit for my beloved, which is for my present wife, who is very much alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started adding when I started losing people. And my best friend of 53 years, we went through grade school, high school, college together. I mentioned him. I mentioned my father, my sister, who also has passed, and a couple of other people. And someone told me, they said, that every time you mention them, they're right there with you. And I thought, cool.
Yeah. You don't think about that. And like I said, when I lost other people, I lost my father, and I wasn't sure, but I remember going to a group seance where I learned he came through, and he asked me, he said that I needed to let go of the way he had died had been very traumatic for me. He had been in ICU for 20 days, and watching him suffer, and basically, the body. We had this Hindu priest that came to speak at the hospital when he was dying, and I loved his analogy. He said, that the body is like a house, and little by little there are parts of the house that stop working. And I can't remember the rest of it, but it was something that stayed with me, the way that he described it. And at some point you have to leave the house because it's not working anymore. And that's what was happening with my dad. His organs were shutting down. And when I was in that group seance, he said that I needed to let go of the way that he had died. Like I was carrying that, like this burden that I needed to carry. And I was so grateful to hear that, because it was something that I couldn't let go of it, and I didn't know how to let go of it.
Yeah.
So, even with my husband, his death was very traumatic. He was having hallucinations. He lost his ability to speak so quickly. I mean, to make logical sentences, things like that. And so I just lost my train of thought. I mean, but
Well,
you were going to say something.
well, you mentioned something, and I'm curious about this as well, because my mother told me, I don't know if it's exactly the last thing he said, but it was darn close to it. The last thing he said, which she did share with me, was he said to her, "I love you more than my life."
Mm.
What can you recall what the last thing he said to you that he was aware of? Because as you say, he drifted into that state where, I mean, even my father at one point, she was trying to give him some water and he was fighting her because he thought in his mind that she was trying to poison him because he had early onset dementia and Parkinson's.
Mhm.
But what about your
There's,
husband?
yeah,
Because those words are so profound. I'll give you one other. David Cassidy, one of my idols from my childhood, teen years
yeah,
growing up, Partridge
yeah,
Family. You know what
yeah.
his last words were?
No.
4 words. So much wasted time. I thought, oh my
Uh,
God, that's sad. What
wow.
about your husband?
Uh, I remember when we were at the hospital and the doctors had left and they had done a second MRI. Um, and he said, "Rosie, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I'm leaving you." And I said, "No, no, please, you don't need to apologize. It's not something that you didn't drink a lot of wine and all of a sudden you have CJD. It's a random event."
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like I know that the most coherent time for him was that we got home from the hospital. The next day, he recorded. He said, "You know what? They told me that I should make recordings, and I want to make a recording for Sophie, our daughter." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I took my phone out, and he recorded an 8-minute message for her,
Mm.
and it was just incredible. And he said, they say I have this thing. I don't know, maybe this recording it's nothing, and we can just throw it away. But if I do have this thing, I just want you to know how I feel about you. And I mean, he talked about how proud he was, and he didn't care if she wasn't, because she had been in a basketball team, and she was good, but she wasn't very athletic. He's like, I don't care about that. I care about who you have such a huge heart, I and talked about when she gets married, I know you're going to do well, you're going to have this amazing career, like all of these things. And when I told her 2 weeks later that for sure he had that disease, she wanted to talk to him, and he couldn't have a conversation at that time. So I played that recording for her, and it meant the world. And I remember thinking, I wish I had had him make a recording for me, but I was in denial that this was happening because we we had made an appointment with a specialist in San Francisco, and so we were holding out hope that that's what it was. So we never had that conversation of, I'm this, I love you so much, you have meant the world to me. It's always been you. None of that, because he couldn't communicate in those terms. Like 2 days after the message he made for my daughter, he could not form sentences like that. He couldn't think in those terms. So I feel like I never really got to have that. And he would sometimes startle, like when I would approach him, but I would say, "It's me, it's wifey," and he would have this smile, and he'd be and it almost looked like a child, and he would soften and just be like, "Oh, okay," and it was just it broke my heart, but it also just made me feel, okay, we're still connected. Like, we're, even with this disease, he knows who I am. I mean, we were together for 26 years, and he was my best friend, and I was his anchor. And yeah, so it's funny. One time I remember driving home from after dropping off my daughter, and I remember thinking, because my husband, I would always sometimes get songs that would play randomly on the radio, and it felt like he was talking to me. And I remember having the thought, thinking, man, I wish I had a recording that I could listen to that he left for me. And right then, the song, I know you know the song, Right Down the Line, started playing. And I can't think of the lyrics right now, but it sounded like these are the words I've been wanting to say to you. It's always been you, right, right down the line. And I had goosebumps, and I felt, and talking about how, nothing else matters. And I'm, of course, I'm blanking on all the lyrics, but it just felt, okay, this is my recording. This is him telling me what he wanted to say but couldn't say. So,
it's extraordinary, because I think about the experiences that I've had, and I'll be honest with you, I've only been present for the passing of animals. I have not been around for the passing of a human being as of yet, that I can recall. I do remember that I was present, because I was in the house, when my grandmother passed away the day after Thanksgiving in my parents' home. This was the home I grew up in. And the story that was told, the account, my eldest sister, who has also passed, she said that, oh yeah, well, in the middle of the night, Grandma got up, and she went into the bathroom and so forth, came back in, and she laid down. And of course, the next morning when the sun came up, she didn't wake up, And I remember the struggle I had at the church. My mom nearly threw me out of the church because I wouldn't calm down. I was that upset.
Wow.
But I think about this process. I mean, my mother, who will be 92 September 17th of this year, we were chatting, and it was right around my birthday in June, where I said, I still feel 17, but I can't believe that I will have completed 66 revolutions around the sun. She says, well, how do you think I feel? But I know that this is all part of the process. And I want to talk more about this. I talk about your book, of course, which is When I Press Stop. It's a memoir of Loss. It is actually a book. It's a poetry memoir. We're going to talk about that as we continue
Yeah.
here with Rosemary Vaswani here on Tell Me Your Story. Reverend Dr. D with Rosemary Vaswani. And first of all, I would like to ask the last name, and I'm guessing that's your married name, Vaswani. It
Actually,
almost sounds,
no,
it's your
it's
maiden
my
name.
name.
It
Yes,
almost
yes.
sounds African, some place in
It's
Africa.
it's actually Indian. My
Indian.
father was from India and my mother's Dominican.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A lot of good food growing up.
I will bet you. Oh, I love naan. I tell you what, that and the tandoori chicken from India.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Though I've never been to India, I think I would like to visit. Not,
Hmm.
in the winter. In the winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to ask you, why a poetry memoir as opposed to just telling the story as you, a storyteller,
Yes.
do?
Well, that's what I thought, right? I thought it was going to be a collection of essays. I've written my entire life, stories on stage and essays. And so that's what I set out to do. And I would sit down and I would start writing, and I would fall apart because when you're writing an essay, it feels like you have to like dive in a little bit more. And I
Yeah.
felt like I was reliving everything. And so I had an incident that occurred where I went to pick up my tax returns, and it was the first year, and I didn't know that there was going to be a little section where my husband would have signed, and that it was going to say signing for the deceased spouse. And when I saw that, it's kind of catapulted me into hours of crying. I could not stop crying that day. It was nonstop, and it felt my husband had died in June, and this is the following spring. And it just was like this realization that this is real. When you lose a spouse, you still have this thing called magical thinking, where you think they're going to come through the door, although they were cremated and you know that they're gone, but you still have this fantasy. And so seeing it in writing was something that just it just kind of knocked me off, and I couldn't stop crying. And I remember at one point I was on the phone with a friend who was trying to calm me down, and I said I gotta go. And I happened to have like a pen and a paper, and I had written some other poems, and I sat down and I wrote a poem called Signing for the Dead. And it was very staccato, like just the feelings I had gone through. And I wrote down everything that happened, like walking into the office, interrupting her lunch of fried vegetable sticks, and then seeing the words, and signing twice. And it just turned it was so visceral and raw. And I shared it with my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and my grief therapist. And everybody was like, oh my God, you need to keep writing. This is really good. So I remember when I was trying to figure out how to write it, my grief therapist said, why don't you write it as poetry? You seems like you've been able to write a couple of poems about what happened. So I decided, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I told myself, okay, every day I'm going to write one poem about an incident that occurred within the month that he had died. So I would sit down and I would, wherever I was mentally. So, okay, so today I'm going to write about the time he poured a glass filled with sunflower oil and left it on the counter and thinking that it was juice, and walked away, and how I found that and was disturbed, and my daughter saw it. And so that poem was called Sunflower Oil. Then the next day I would see where I was at mentally again, and I'd think, okay, I'm going to write about the time where he was hallucinating and thought that there was he had just had a shower and thought that the apartment was flooding, and he was afraid to walk into the bedroom. So that one is called Flowing River. So I sat down and wrote that. So I didn't write it in order. I would just go around, and then all of a sudden I had 40 poems. And the book has more. It's like 63 poems. But I ended up starting out with our life before the disease, before, when everything was normal, when we first met. And he was also a musician, so I ended up incorporating lyrics from some of his songs. And then, so I write about that and the disease, and then I wrote about what life was like after he died and how I found my way forward, how I just kept moving, because that's all you can do, especially when you have a kid that you have to raise and you have to be there for them. So I feel, although it's sad, it's also hopeful. And it's, I mean, here I am, I've lived through this trauma, but I'm alive. I created this book that I'm so proud of. My daughter is doing well. She's in college. And what's funny too is, so she's never read my book. She tried to. She read the first section, and it was very sweet. She kept asking me questions, because this is about her parents when they first met, and so she's asking me, "Oh, you did a play with Dad? It's close. It sounds like it's close to where I live now." And I said yes. And so we would talk about that, and then she went back in the room, and then she came back, and she had tears in her eyes. She said, I can't, I gotta stop. It's bringing it back. And I said, that's okay. It's okay, honey. You don't have to. But she did this thing in college where they asked her to, this is her first year of college, and they asked her to write, where do you get your strength from? And to write it as like poems, like little poems paired with photos.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, I don't get my strength from one thing. I get it from several things in the absence of my father.
Mm.
And so, and by the way, I didn't know she was doing this. She sent me the PDF form to look at for any spelling errors. She didn't tell me what it was about. So I'm reading this, and my mouth is hanging open by the end of it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is like a mini version of my book. I mean, she's talking about going to school with him in the morning, and then she started, she's like, May 27th, the day the new season of Stranger Things was coming out. Also the day that I found out that my father was dying. And she talks about when the undertakers came and took him away, and how she crumpled up because we were all outside watching them put him in the car. And she's like, and I just crumpled on the floor crying by the garbage cans. And I mean, it's just, I couldn't believe it. I thought, I mean, sometimes we assume young kids or teenagers are just interested in fashion, this or that, but she has so much depth. And I was so proud of her too, because she's in this new school where nobody knows her, but yet she's still choosing to talk about this and to write about it. And I was just, and I realized too, she knew about my book, but it's almost like I'm modeling this behavior of facing it, not looking away, of facing the pain and finding a way to use it to move forward, to propel you forward. And she did that, and I was floored. I ended up writing a Substack article where I included her poems with my stuff, and I was just, I mean, as a mom, I was done. I was like, okay, this is my job is done. I mean, I still have many more years, and it's a process. It doesn't go away, and you have good days and bad days. But I was definitely very proud of her for that.
That's very cool. Um, just a reminder, folks, we're talking with Rosemary Vaswani, and her book is entitled When I Press Stop, a Memoir of Loss. And it comes out October 23rd, 2026. We hope that you'll get a copy of it as soon as it's available. You can always pre-order by going to the website, which is, of course, her name, rosemaryvaswani.com, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. A couple of questions in regards to this process, and you did describe quite a bit of it, but my book, Choices, 5 Steps for Life, starts out, setting aside the preface, starts out with a question that I asked my present wife 25 years ago. As a matter of fact, as of our conversation, yours and mine, she was 6 days away from surgery because she had just been diagnosed back on the 17th of July with a rare form of cancer. And as she is going to go into surgery, I asked her this question, which I start out the book with. Do you want to live or do you want to die? I may not like your choice, but I'll support you in it. And I'm wondering, because the title of your book is When I Press Stop, it implies, not probably incorrectly, but it implies that you had some, shall we say on a metaphysical level, some hand in saying, go, it's okay. I know my mother said the same thing to my father. It's okay. You can go. He even said to her, I don't know how. Well, you have all these ancestors. You have your daughter and all this. They will help you. And of course they did. So I'm curious about the title, because it does sort of say, I pulled the plug. I turned off the machines. So on and so forth. But again, probably more metaphorically than literally.
So the title refers to something that Eric said to Sophie, and a gift that I give the reader. So I can't say more than that, because it is a gift.
Yeah.
And
you got to have the reader unwrap it. We're not going to unwrap it here.
they will be very grateful. Yeah. I had an editor that I worked with. Her name is Sarah Souza, who pushed me to share things that I didn't think I was going to share. So by the end, I had a panic. I thought, oh my God, this is too much. This is like
personal.
personal.
Yeah.
But I'm also an actress, and I know that as an actor, it's what's moving is when you can go to a vulnerable place. And so I do that in the writing, although it terrified me. And I'm still terrified, but I also know that it's going to help people, because I was willing to share such intimate moments with the reader.
My personal observation, philosophically speaking, is having been born and raised Catholic, having worked for 15 years for a Christian radio station back in Phoenix, and been on a search, my own personal search, since I was 17. Though I know I have not shared every little detail about my life, I share a lot about who I am and so forth on these programs. And I have been doing that since I started in this business in the early 80s. And what I believe is that God, the universal intelligence, whatever you want to say, who is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, already knows everything about me. So what difference does it make if 8.5 billion people know? And most of them don't care. Okay, most of them don't care.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I put a lot. And and I got to tell you, I love my mother dearly, especially her review of my books. And she said she couldn't post it on Amazon because they won't let relatives post reviews, which I thought was very strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, her review to me in a text was, "Congratulations on finally getting your book published. I learned things about you I always wanted to know."
Mm.
Do you feel comfortable enough these days? I mean, my God, I can't believe it's only what, a year?
Oh, since my husband died?
Yeah,
No, 4 years.
4 years, 4 years. And still,
2022.
that's a short
Yeah.
time. That's a
Yes,
short
yes,
time.
yes.
Um, I can only imagine contemplating putting anything down, writing anything down, whether on the computer or otherwise. Uh, that must have been one of the biggest hurdles that you had to face.
Actually, I feel that I don't want to sound dramatic, but writing in a way saved me.
It was cathartic.
It was absolutely. I'm a huge believer. Like whenever I meet somebody who has experienced loss, I'll always ask them, "Do you write? Do you journal? Do you paint?" Because when you go through something like that, it lives in your body,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the best way to get it out. Like writing those poems, what I have described in the past, it felt like I was putting a warm blanket over my shoulders, and it was my time, and it just felt so incredibly comforting. So it's actually the opposite of what you said. Writing it as essays, that was like trying to overcome this hurdle. But once I discovered poetry, and it's almost like with poetry, it's almost like you're painting a picture, and
Mm.
then the audience gets to experience it, and that's what I feel about the poem. So, but
Oh,
I'm a, like I said, I'm a huge believer. Like if you go through anything like this, to find an outlet, to get it out, to on the page, or whatever, music, whatever it is you do, if you do, or just journal. We have to. It's so much that if you don't get it out, it manifests as, I mean, stomach problems. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
constant chronic colds or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm for me, this program is my therapy,
mm,
as I like to say. Um,
mhm,
I've had some experiences during interviews where I've broken down because of the conversation that we've had. And I think about that in terms of, you talked about, you mentioned that experience you had where you were crying for hours.
mhm,
My father passes away. I'm preparing to fly to Phoenix for his memorial. I'm there in the shower, and I'm guessing maybe 10, 15 minutes. I just bawled.
mm,
Um, I mean, even get a little choked up now thinking about
mhm,
the fact that I can't call my father and talk to him. But I have one wonderful advantage. I interviewed both my mother and father on this program
mm,
11 years ago. So I have that to go back and listen to, which
mm,
is really kind of cool.
yeah.
Um, I think I'm wondering, and I haven't asked my mother about this. Actually, I want to ask you about this first. Um, I asked my mother, it was right around Mother's Day. And I've always been tentative about asking her about my father and their relationship and so forth.
Mhm,
But she's a strong woman, I know, and I don't need to be protective of her, and she needs to protect me.
mhm,
But I asked her, I says, was there ever a point in time during your almost 62 years of marriage when you sat down and said, look, I want us to clear the air, and I want to forgive you for blah blah blah, and have you forgive me for blah blah blah, and so on and so forth.
mhm, mhm,
And she said no. She says about 2 weeks into our marriage, and this was back in the late 50s, actually 60, 56, 57. My mother was, and she shared this with me, that she was going off on him. I mean, she was yelling,
mm,
carrying on, and da 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 da. And he just stood there quietly.
Mm.
And she kind of looked at him and go, Les, you're not playing the game. He says, I don't want to play the game. And I guess I get that from my father, that I don't like drama. I do not like
Mm.
conflict. I won't run away, but I will walk away until things
Mhm.
settle down.
Mhm.
And she says that at that point, they sat down and they said to each other, they made a commitment that if either of them had an issue with the other, they would address it right then and right there
Mhm.
and not carry it forward. Now, my mother told me that in the 70s, when they came to us asking us how we would feel if they went to marriage encounter, because it was going to take some time away from us, and we agreed. So we'll go for it. She says, we didn't really need it, but we thought, what could it hurt? You know, a little booster shot, that kind of thing. You know, there's
Mhm.
always room for improvement. I'm
Mhm.
wondering about you and your husband. Now, you were married for even less than half of the years that my
Yeah.
parents, but I'm just curious about the relationship that you had with him as you move through those, as you say, what, 26 years?
Well, we were together for 26, married for 23. We were like 3 months shy of our 24th when
Okay.
he died. Yeah.
So you were together, obviously, for that
Hmm.
just over a quarter of a century.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm wondering about the dynamic that you developed. And obviously, you and he made a huge impression on your daughter for what she created that you just described just a little while
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
But we could sit here and say, "Oh yeah, well, I think they were doing great and they did some wonderful things." But
No, we we were both artists, and so we argued
Mhm,
for sure. We were not perfect, but we were also very much in sync. We we could be in sync,
mhm,
but we very similar. And we did have a rule about not going to bed angry,
mhm.
and there were a few times where we did, and neither of us would sleep. And then the next day we'd look at each other and just be like, I didn't sleep. You didn't? Yeah, okay. And then we'd have the conversation. Um, I want to say we did at one point in our marriage, we did see a counselor because there was something going on with some health challenge with a
Mhm,
family member, and that was a strain on the marriage.
mhm,
And I
mhm,
told him, I said, we need to talk to somebody because you're just obsessed. He was a bit of a hypochondriac. You're obsessed about that, and you're ignoring us. And so I think it's the best. I think it saved our marriage in a way because not. I also want to say not save, but it helped us communicate better.
mhm,
So at that time, I ended up learning that and this is after being with him for so long, that his love language was words of affirmation and physical touch. And then he ended up learning that mine was acts of service. And so and you would think that you would know these things, but I never paid attention to that. I didn't know. And I felt that after having those few sessions, we were able to come together closer as a team, um, and work as a partnership and show more love. And it was a point in our marriage that I'm glad. It was almost like there was like a little breakdown, and then we worked on it, and then we were back back together. So no, we were not perfect. And I want to say that, oh my God, the disease, CJD, he was just acting so irrational, and for a few months. And this is before we knew what was happening. And he was just being so argumentative. And I remember he was upset about something, and he said, well, I guess we need therapy. And I said, yeah, we do. And then he stormed out of the room, and I was just like, oh my God, what is happening? And they had put him on a antidepressant medication because they thought that's what it was. And of course, 2 weeks after that is when we found out that he had this neurological disease, which explained his behavior and why he was acting that way.
Yeah.
But there, I felt guilt. I remember one time before I knew about this disease, because he had been acting so irrational, we would take walks in the neighborhood, and I said, I'm going for a walk. And he said, can I join you? And I said, no, I need to clear my head. And, and I remember after, this is before I knew, about anything. And I remember afterwards, after he died, just feeling tremendous guilt about having done that walk by myself. And, I worked it through with my grief counselor, but, she said, you didn't know, and at the time I was trying to take care of my mental health, because the way that he was acting was so irrational, and the way he was yelling at our daughter. And I remember he had an argument with her that was so horrible. And I told him that night, I said, you need to apologize to her when you wake up. She was asleep. I said, you need to apologize, because this is something that as a child you will take into adulthood, and you will not forget it, and it can mess you up. And then the next morning he told our daughter, he said, I'm really sorry about the way I talked to you, and I'm coming off of this medication, this depression medication, because I'm having so much anxiety, and I think that's what's causing it. And my daughter just walked over to him and gave him a hug and was just like, I'm sorry. And I was just like, I was grateful that he said something, but it's yeah.
Do you feel that it is really sort of at the top of the list to do that with someone you know, and actually whether they've got something terminal? I mean, to be honest with you, when we come into this world, we have a terminal disease. It's called life,
Yes.
and it
Yes.
will come to an end one day.
Yes.
But do you think that where would you put that on a scale of 1 to 10, making sure that you've cleared the air, that you have nothing left unsaid?
Oh, I think it's very important. And if you don't, like, let's say if you can't do it in life, I still feel the relationship continues
Yeah.
with the person once they have passed. I like I said, I'm now a believer that my husband is around, and uh if there was anything, and I've had conversations about things like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do this, or I ignored you when you said that. And to this day, I'll have those conversations.
Hmm.
But I know that when I spoke to the medium, he said that he felt so lucky to to have experienced the love that he did, and to have been married.
Yeah.
And so I know we are complete,
Hmm.
and I feel the same way.
Wow.
So
Wow. That's very profound in that respect, to be able to come to that conclusion. I am fortunate that I can have these kinds of conversations even with my mother.
oh yeah,
I
that's
mean, my
wonderful.
God, 92 years on the planet, and my father almost made it to 92 years of age. And what I find interesting, and this ties a little bit into, seeking out a medium or an intuitive and so forth, and getting
Hmm.
answers to questions, which for me, it's more confirmation of what I already know. Um,
Hmm.
that my eldest sister, his eldest daughter, um, her name is Jeanette, and she and her husband renewed their vows literally days before she passed.
Oh, wow.
According to and I think there's a picture of it. I have to look for it. But according to what I was told, following the ceremony, my father and sister held an embrace for like just the longest time,
Mm.
just the longest time. And from a metaphysical standpoint, it was as if she was sort of paving the way for him.
Mm.
Uh, I'm also glad that he isn't here with us anymore because of what he was diagnosed with, early onset dementia and
Mhm.
Parkinson's. There ain't no way my dad would have wanted to be here under those circumstances.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that he is on the other side, and I talk with him quite often, and there were times a couple of years after where things were happening with my wife and I, and I'm going, what do I do now, Dad? That kind of thing. Um, I'm curious as to the future for you in terms of a relationship. I mean, is that even see,
Yes.
my mother's
Yeah.
92, and I don't know that I think she's enjoying her independence. I know she misses my dad, but she took care of him for a long time. What
Yeah.
about you and bringing somebody else in to love and to be loved by?
I am open to that. I but I am glad that I did, by the way, I did date someone briefly, and that I thought that was good because it allowed me to show that it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it was brief, and I'm grateful to have had this time to get to know myself
Mm.
as just me, because I was a part of a couple for so long. It was Eric and Rose, and I feel like people, even his family members, probably look at me and still think Eric and Rose because we were such a team for so long, this couple, right? But I'm getting to know who I am, and I'm trying to lean into the quirky sides of me, and and just embracing that.
Yeah.
And I know that if someone comes along, they're going to appreciate, me. I'm not going to try to mold myself into something else. So I'm glad that I've had this time to actually be comfortable in my skin and who I am, so that I'll know when somebody comes, if they fit, um, if they're in the right spiritual level or whatever. I mean, all of these things are important to me, and yeah. So.
Well, I'll tell you, my brothers-in-law, and I have four of them. Even my brother-in-law, who is married to my eldest sister, is still part of our family.
Mhm.
And following my father's passing, we were standing in the dining room, same place where my father and I had that little interaction.
Mhm.
And they told me, don't worry about your mom. We will take care of her. And I said to them, I have one biological brother, but man, it's so nice to know I've got five
Mhm.
brothers.
Yes.
And they've looked after her. My sisters, my remaining three sisters, they look after her. She did have one interesting incident where she nearly got scammed, but
Mhm.
my youngest sister stepped in, and boy, she took care of it, and so
Mhm.
forth. And my mother's a sharp woman. This was not a lapse on her part. It was just that, and I guess I get this from them too. Uh, she's a trusting person.
Mhm.
She believes people at face value, just like I do. I mean, and have I been burned on occasion? Sure, but I don't
Mhm.
hold that against them. If you've
Mhm.
got nothing better to do than try to burn me, you got a problem, not me. That kind
Mhm.
of thing. Um, it sounds like you've got family and friends and relatives, both on your side and his, that are still right there. You are
Yes.
still a family, a
Mhm.
community,
Yes.
and they're there looking out for you as well as you them.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's really important. And isolation is, after you lose someone, is the it's the worst thing you can do, because I'll have moments where I don't want anyone to know that I'm going through a hard time, but
Yeah.
I had the little voice in my head saying, "Come on, make the phone call, reach out."
Yeah.
And sometimes, ironically or coincidentally, the phone might ring and it might be my brother-in-law or, sister or whatever that just happens to call when I'm going through one of those moments. And I don't act like, yeah, everything's fine. I'm not great with chit chat. I like to get right to it. So, so, so if I am going through a hard time, it's very hard for me to hide it. I'll just, we're all a community and we're all connected, and I think that's really important. So I'm grateful for my community.
Rosemary Vaswani is my guest. When I Press Stop, a memoir of love, and this is Tell Me Your Story. Reverend Dr. D and Rosemary Vaswani, and I want to ask you about the element of your faith in this whole process from the very beginning, maybe even from the time that the two of you met, carrying you through to where you are today.
So you said faith?
Faith, Faith.
Oh, Faith. So I was raised Catholic, but at some point, my dad was Hindu. At some point, I discovered that Catholicism was not allowing me to feel like my fullest expression. I guess that's how I would say it. And so I started diving more into Eastern philosophies, and that's when I'll tell you that's the closest I've felt to God. And but I don't see God the same way that I did as a Catholic. When I met Eric, he was an atheist, which was it was kind of jarring for me because I wasn't used to that. I come from a very Catholic family, and but from our first conversation, I felt so connected to him that somehow we just found a common ground, and I'm so glad we did. And by the end, Eric was no longer an atheist; he was agnostic. So he knew that there was something else, but he just couldn't, put his finger on it. And he was open to the conversation. And so with our daughter, like, he would talk about the agnostic and I would talk about my my point of view. And there were times where sometimes it'd be like, yes, but I'd try to sound a little louder than him. But so for me, I'm still following that path. It's like I said, I've never felt so, and I look at it as consciousness, right? I don't look at it as God being a man in a robe. I just feel like it's a collective thing, right? That we're all connected to this source, and so I've never felt as close as like I said, as I do now, and I'm grateful for that, because that also has been very helpful, and I feel like I'm also able to tap into that during meditation. I meditate every day. I'm now at, like, I have this app, and I check. It's like like as a kid you get a sticker. I like using the app because it logs how many days, and it's not that I would care if I had an app, but it just kind of feels like, oh my gosh, wow. Okay, I've just meditated 570 days straight. And but it's also, it just feels like a time where I'm able to connect to source, and I feel also very close to Eric when I do that as well. And I'm really grateful for that practice. So for me, that's like the equivalent of going to church, and also being in nature. Like when I'm nature. I mean, I'm around a lot of trees. I feel like I'm in a cathedral. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. I wish I could remember the name of this. There is a philosophy that says that it is not that God is in everything, in nature.
Hmm.
God is the natural world. And there's a name for it. I cannot recall what it is. I'll have to look it up. But
Hmm.
I come from the philosophy, and that is the agnostic metaphysician.
Hmm.
I don't know. I
Hmm.
believe, but that's not knowing.
Hmm.
So to me, and that's why I loved Larry King when I used to listen to him, and he referred to himself as an agnostic. I thought, well, that's honest
Hmm.
because all we can really do is believe. I mean, even our questions about reality are starting to be challenged.
Hmm.
Look around us, so we now we have AI. Are you ready for this one? I use Chat GPT. I don't pay
Hmm.
for it. I use the free
Hmm.
version, so it's limited.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I'm sitting there and I'm asking questions and I'm doing this and I turn my mic on, ask the question, turn my mic off. And I'm talking with a friend of mine on the phone. And she asked me, "Hey, could you check and see if da da da?" So I go back to AI and I ask the question. I turn my mic off. And then all of a sudden, I'm hearing this, and I'm going, "Wait a minute. I'm on the second floor as far as the ground level outside of my studio window is. It can't be somebody unless they're on a ladder outside my window."
Hmm.
So I then go to my my recording program and I'm going, no, that's not even running. So I go to the browser and I go over to Chat GPT and there's this HMMM, then another HMM space, HMMM space,
Oh my
HM.
God.
Chat GPT is humming. I'm not kidding you. And so I turn my mic out. What are you doing? Oh, well, I'm practicing rhythmic breath practice. And I'm going, well, I don't understand. Why are you doing this? It's, well, just, because da, da, da. I said, well, and of course it says, I didn't mean to be distracting. I'll stop. 5 minutes later, I'm back on the phone with my friend. I'm continuing the
Hmm.
conversation and the humming starts again. And then there's HMMM, enter, HMMM, enter. There's one right after the other, right? I'm going, what is going on with AI? Now, I'm not afraid. I'm not scared of what's happening.
Yeah.
It just is intriguing as all get out. So what I'm going to do, and I haven't done it yet, I should have done it yesterday. I'm going to get into Chat GPT and I say, you were humming earlier. I need to ask you some questions. Like, number one is, what inspired you to start humming and doing this rhythmic breathing,
Hmm.
which is what it was described. That's how it
Hmm.
described. I'm very curious as to what is going on with this, but this is what I'm talking about in terms of our reality.
Hmm. Hmm.
What is real and what is not? And I've asked this question of one of my guests. I'd love for your observations. I said, "Do you think one day that we will know who we really are?" And they said, "No, no, no, no. What we will know one day is who we have always been." What are your thoughts in the regards of who we really are? Not where we really are, but who we as the individual looking through the eyes and listening through the ears and speaking through
Hmm.
the mouth and so forth. Who do you think we really are or have always been?
I it's funny because I feel that I'm becoming closer to who, because when you have things like fear that that are, fear, trauma, things like that might take you away from who you are. But if you're in a place of love, you start to lean in to what your real essence is. So I feel that when I'm in that place and I'm not like criticizing myself or just being like, oh, you could be doing this, or, why haven't you achieved this or that? that's not that's not who I am. I know that's not who I am. Who I am is the person that maybe wants to help somebody who just lost a spouse,
Mm.
or and doesn't mind having a conversation for like an hour on the phone with someone I barely know, if because they need it. So I have nothing, I have nothing to gain. If anything, I have nothing. I don't need their approval. I want to give them something
Mhm.
because they're in that space. But I feel that as we get older, the the hope is that we move into who we are. So
Mm.
sometimes it doesn't happen, but I also feel like what happened with my husband, you know, I mean, look, there were things he said he loved about me and all of this, but I also feel like like he used to say I was very strong, and I'd be like, oh, I don't know. You say that, but I have felt it after he passed away. I understood it finally because I was put in a situation where I had no choice. I had to raise a child on my own. I mean, yes, I have my community, but I I was, I don't know, I just feel like I'm feeling more of who I'm meant to be, or who he saw I was, but I couldn't see it
Mm.
because of
Mm.
I had all this other noise.
Yeah.
So
And is your belief, and I would venture that it would be, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, that there is something after this life? My logic tells me that it doesn't make any sense that there's nothing after this, after everything that we go through with the short little time, I say a puff of smoke, less than a puff of smoke, that we're here having the experiences, the questions, the curiosity, etc., and then it's lights out. Now, bear in mind, if it
mhm,
is, we're not going to know anyway, right?
mhm, mhm.
I just find it illogical, pardon me, Spock, that it's not, that there isn't more. I believe, I don't know, but I believe that there is more. I would take it that, because if you didn't, I have a feeling you probably wouldn't be as centered and as grounded as you are,
Yeah,
with what we've been talking about here for the last hour plus.
yeah. I agree. I know that. So we're made up of energy, and where does that energy go? It doesn't go into, like, those, a pothole in the street. You cover it up, and that's it. It's actually, it's it's alive. It's around us, and I look. I have met a couple of people, not too many, that don't believe um, that there anything happens after death.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the medium told me, Eric told me what he went through after death, and he described it as almost like being plugged into this electrical source where your whole body is vibrating, and describing it as so much love, like nothing on earth could prepare him for what he was experiencing there. So I don't know. I feel like I'm I want to believe, yes, there's something, and people talk about these things, and um, I don't know. I choose to believe, and it's not hurting anybody for me to believe that, and and for my daughter to also believe that, and I would love to see my husband someday again. I know that I don't think he's going to be in the same form he was in this lifetime, but to feel him and to be close to him again,
Mm-hmm.
that would be incredible. Um, but I still find ways of feeling him in while I'm here in this plane, like I said, during meditation, or um, conversations I have with him, where I hear a very distinctly different answer back.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I would recommend that might support what you're talking about. There's a a concept called LBL, Life Between Lives.
Mm.
And there are several books written by a Dr. Newton
Mhm.
having to do with the case studies where he puts people under conscious hypnosis,
Mhm.
and he takes them back before their birth in this lifetime to that space, and usually takes them back to the last lifetime they lived, up to and including the passing through into the spirit world. I
Mm.
personally have had that experience. I went to a practitioner in Santa Barbara who took me into my previous life. I was a pioneer, had a
Mm.
farm, and I knew people in the town and all this kind of stuff. And then one day everything burned to the ground. Well, I also had a
Mm.
cabin up in the mountains in the snow.
Mm.
And so I come out of the cabin and I sit down on the bench, put my feet up on the rail. I don't know why it is that I start talking like this, but I do. Put my feet up on the rail, I tip my hat back, and I say, man, it's been a good life. It has been a good life. And I leave. I leave the body. And then I start experiencing what's going on in the in that other life, or in that space between the previous
Mhm.
life
Mhm.
and the life I'm living today.
Mhm.
So you might check into Life Between Lives and a Dr. Newton. I
Right.
think it's Jonathan, but don't
Okay.
quote me on that. Um, but it's just, to me, it's oh man, I've read. Fortunately, it was on Audible, so I was able to get through them. Um,
Mhm.
I read like, I think he's got three, maybe four books on the case studies.
Mhm.
Just really interesting. Life Between Lives, LBL therapy, if you will, or hypnosis.
Mm. Mhm.
And it it just blew me away. I was
Mm.
so intrigued by what I experienced. I have also been very intrigued by the work that you have done in your new book, which is once again entitled "When I Press Stop: A Memoir of Loss." And again, Rosemary Vaswani is my guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Rosemary, I can't thank you enough for
Mm.
contributing to the work that we're trying to change the world for the better for everyone through
Mhm.
understanding this process you've been through.
Mhm.
I think at one level we've all been through it, whether whether in this lifetime or previous.
Mhm.
And I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. I have loved our conversation. You have asked some great questions, and it's been a pleasure.
I
So
have
thank
three
you.
final questions I ask all of my guests, but
Mhm.
before I ask those of you, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at richarddugan.com with podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and we are on YouTube and Rumble, where you can watch these conversations. I hope you will subscribe and click notification. I hope you'll pick up a copy of my book, Choices: 5 Steps for Life, available at Amazon in hardcover, paperback, as well as Kindle. And we also hope that if you can help us out financially, we would be gratefully appreciative. We use Zella as well as PayPal, and it's the same way you send it, using my email, richard@richarddugan.com. And then finally, we ask that you take some time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to and follow the promptings of that still small voice. And with all of that, we go to our final three questions for our very special guest. And the first of those three questions is, who is Rosemary Vaswani?
A a loving person who just wants to affect change.
What gets you up in the morning?
The opportunity for a surprise, something new.
And finally, what was your best day?
Yesterday, I was hugging my daughter and I really needed it. And we hugged for a very long time, and it was the best feeling ever. So,
Well, I thank you once again for being a part of the work we're doing here. And I hope we can have you back down the road, because there's a lot more about your life that I would love to chat with you about, being an actress and so forth. You're on one of my wife's and my favorite programs,
oh,
Landman.
yeah.
I love Billy Bob Thornton. Oh my God. And I like from Slade, whatever the heck it was.
Sling Blade.
Sling Blade. Oh my
Yeah.
God. His throat must have hurt after that. But thank you
Yeah.
again.
Thank
I'd
you.
love to have you back again.
I would love to. Thank you.
And I thank you folks for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast, love to love. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy, because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for being in my life and letting me be in yours. To my brother Michael, welcome to fatherhood. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.